Hi, gorgeous. Welcome back to the Purpose Show podcast. We are diving today into something that is not just a habit or a personality quirk, which it is so often written off as, but it's something that can actually control your entire life if you let it and you don't get it in check. And that is people pleasing. So if you have ever said yes with a smile and when inside you felt like you were like absolutely not, if you've done things just to keep the peace or to gain approval, or one of the bigger ones in the last couple years of my life that I noticed that I had to work through, unfortunately, is really feeling a deep-seated need to make men specifically comfortable and at the cost of my own comfort and my own safety and my own desires. It's absolutely draining. I know how, it's actually deeply exhausting. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you lose yourself in the process of people pleasing. And this way of being rules my life for years. I feel like I started people pleasing when I was like a toddler. And just kept doing it in different ways. And the form that it took and the situations it happened in just kind of shifted as I got older and started doing life in different seasons of life, but it shaped my relationships, my self-worth or lack of self-worth, and my entire way of being in the world. And I think for a lot of us, we've been taught that being good means sacrificing our needs and putting everyone else first, because that's the kind thing to do. And if that is you, I wrote this episode for you, and I'm really glad you're here. So stay. We're gonna get through this. And I'm going to get really real about what breaking free from people pleasing has looked like for me. It's an ongoing process for sure. Actually, even just this morning, I had to send a text that I had like a stomach ache, and it was the most basic shit. Like, it wasn't a big deal at all. It's just me speaking my truth and setting a precedent. And it's very basic. And I was literally like on a huge walk this morning, like thinking about it the whole time. Like, it's still a process. But we're going to talk about what the growth in this area has looked like for me and how I'm even able to send those texts now and set those boundaries and speak up, how my religious upbringing shaped it, and really just the messy but beautiful steps that I've taken to really reclaim myself and my voice and finally start living for me. This is not going to be a quick fix episode. It's more, I want you to see this more as an invitation to start seeing the patterns you're stuck in and finding a way out. Okay, so let's get into really understanding people pleasing and what it really is. It is not about being nice. Being nice is a choice. People pleasing, on the other hand, is a compulsion. And I really want you to hear and understand the difference. People pleasing is putting everyone else's needs and comfort and feelings ahead of your own over and over and over because you're terrified of rejection or judgment or people's emotions. This happens a lot for those of us that were raised by maybe an emotionally erratic parent, or even just picked up in society that this is what we're supposed to do. People pleasing can happen to anyone, but it is very, very common in women. It's that inner voice telling you, if you don't make them happy, it's not going to be good. They're not going to like you. They'll leave. Or even in some extreme cases, you're not going to be a good person or it's not safe. And I remember the first time that I realized that I wasn't just being nice. I am a nice person, but I was not just being nice. I was performing for approval, performing for love, performing to be liked, performing so people would see me in a certain way, trying to control their narrative, performing because I thought I had to be this perfect, agreeable, palatable version of myself in order to be good, in order to be deserving of anything. And that's the dangerous part, is that people pleasing robs you of your authenticity. It steals your voice and it steals your joy. You start to forget what you want and who you are, and it can get to a point that's so bad you actually fully lose touch with that. And that's what happened to me. I couldn't even answer the question, what do I want? because my mind was so crowded and flooded with, well, what do they want? What do I think I'm supposed to say here? What's the right thing to do? And it wasn't even the right thing to do. It was like basically like the right thing to do for me meant, what do they want me to say and do? People pleasing stripped me of my voice, my strength, my personality, my authenticity, and even of an awareness of myself. It stripped me of a relationship with myself because doing it repeatedly over decades left me with no real sense of who I am and what I wanted. And for those of us raised in environments that really emphasized selflessness, particularly in religious settings, this gets even more layered and more complicated. We are taught that being good means always putting others first. You are dead last, and that is like your crowning glory. That's good. But what happens when putting others first starts to destroy you from the inside out? It becomes more about proving your worth than actually being a compassionate person and being generous and being kind and being a good friend and being helpful. It's not that. Remember, it's that compulsion. You have to, otherwise you're not good. That's not healthy. It is not supposed to be like that. So let's go back to when people pleasing completely consumed me and my life. Like I've mentioned so many times, I grew up in this very religious, oppressively religious setting where the message was very clear. A good woman is quiet, helpful, always available to others, and never, ever difficult or, bitchy. So I became that woman. I buried all my needs. I covered up all my desires, and eventually I covered up myself. I would say yes to everything, helping with things, hosting things, being there for everyone, putting off something that I was really looking forward to because somebody needed something from me. Um, I thought it made me valuable. I thought being available and putting everyone first made me good and made me have value. I thought it made me lovable. But really, it was just draining the life from me and making me a shell of a person to where it's like there wasn't even a sense of self. There wasn't even like a real person to know. It was all performance. And so when I kind of hit this breaking point in my life where Brian and I were together really just unpacking the religion and all the belief systems and really just like kind of feeling like the rug was ripped out from under us and we ripped it out. Like we just felt like, oh my God, like what is real? What do we even do now? Like we were just really going through this massive deconstruction of everything we were raised to believe. And at that point, how we had even been raising our kids up to that point, which I'm very thankful that we figured things out and shifted while they were still pretty little. But in that process and in that time of my life, I noticed a pattern of like me just basically self-betraying all the time. And I didn't have that verbiage for it, but that's what it was. And I just noticed that it like didn't make me feel good. And I everything in my life at that point, I was putting under the microscope of religion. Like, does this come from religion? Does this come from my programming in a way that's not good for me? And I started noticing that people pleasing pattern and put it under that lens of where does this come from? And sure enough, I mean, it comes from being a girl and being raised in this society as a woman, and then religion programming as well. And I realized that I truly had no idea what I even liked or what I wanted. I didn't have any hobbies. I guess my hobbies were like serving in the church, being on the worship team, hosting. I'm like triggered even talking about this. Hosting like Bible studies, and Brian and I ran like a couples Bible study thing at our house every week. And I thought that was my hobbies. Like I literally had nothing that I just liked to do for me. I didn't even know how to answer simple questions about myself. I had spent so much time trying to make sure that everyone else was okay that I forgot how to take care of myself. And I really just disconnected fully from who I even am. It was like my soul was locked up away somewhere in a box, and it was locked and dark, and I just couldn't even tell you where it was. It was just completely disconnected from me. And obviously that's not true. It's just how it felt. But breaking free from that, when I noticed the pattern, it felt really hopeless and it felt impossible at first. Like I was honestly scared of who I might be if I wasn't the good helper anymore. I was scared that people were going to leave if I started setting boundaries. And I think it like There's an episode that I did with Julie Brumley and Becky Astay where we talk about self-abandonment and emotional abandonment. And for those of us that feel like we were emotionally abandoned as children, that wound is so, so deep and can often have like even deeper effects than being physically abandoned by, a loved one or a parent, because the person is still there, but emotionally, like they've left you. And it's just so confusing, especially for a kid. And so I was really deeply subconsciously, I wasn't aware of any of this consciously, but I was very deeply subconsciously afraid that if I wasn't good, I wasn't helpful, if I wasn't making myself available and pleasing everybody and putting myself last, then I was going to get left. And I had an abandonment wound, and that was the biggest source of my people pleasing for me personally. I was scared that if I started setting boundaries, they would leave and I would lose people. And one of the biggest fears I had was realizing that I had built entire relationships. I had made major life decisions based on this false version of myself. I had even built up an entire brand with hundreds of thousands of followers in my audience based on a false version of myself. So the panic that was like coursing through my body on a daily basis, how much this fucked up my central nervous system was so real. Like, what was going to happen if I showed people the real me? It was super messy. It hurt. I did lose people. My worst fear happened. I lost a lot of people, and most of them were in really painful ways. I had one friend that was a really, really good friend of mine for about 10 years. And she didn't understand me. She wasn't okay with how I was evolving and how I was really stepping back and focusing on me and growing and learning and challenging things that I was raised to believe and questioning things and reading and learning for myself and going on my own path. And she just wasn't able to hold that space for me, and that's okay. However, the conversation, she decided to do this over text and said some really hurtful things, including like, I'm going to hell and she's not going to be around me anymore. And it was just really wild because I didn't even open up fully to her about the things that I was like questioning and my personal spiritual journey and my process, because I just intuitively knew I couldn't trust her with that. So it's kind of like, well, shit, if you're saying this when you don't even know anything, like you're definitely not safe for me to open up to at this phase of my life. So I just kind of like, I had a coach I was working with at the time, and she really supported me and just really letting her go with love and light. And I sent her very loving texts and just released her. She's not blocked or anything. She could always reach back out, but she hasn't. And that season of our relationship is wrapped up. But it was messy and it hurt a lot. And while I lost people, I also found me. And I stopped seeking approval all the fucking time and started learning to really love my mess, myself, the imperfections, the non-vanilla, non-good girlized version of who I really am. And I remember specifically really starting to like my sarcasm and my sense of humor and like my bluntness, which was really crazy because those were the parts of me that I had always felt the most shame for and felt like I needed to hide more than anything else. And that was the first thing that I really like started to fall in love with about myself, the things that other people might not be able to handle or might not like. And of course, it's not like I'm being a mean person or anything, but it's just my sense of humor, the way I talk. If you have listened to the podcast before, like even in this episode, I'm doing it. It's just my voice. And I really just was like, damn, I'm kind of hilarious. Like, I really like who I am, and I like that I say what everyone else is thinking, and I like that I'm witty, and my mind is so sharp, and I'm so witty, and I really like that. And I just started to uncover these parts of myself that I had buried and always felt like weird or bad about, and actually really authentically started to like them. And then I started to love them. And then I started to like just be more curious about who I really was and what kind of things I really liked. And it just leaked into everything. But I want to get a little bit deeper into how religious teachings played into my people pleasing, because I know a lot of you have flocked to my side of the internet and come to me and found me and connected with me because we have this in common. So I want to at least touch on it a little bit deeper. For a lot of us, especially women, religion teaches that our worth is measured by how much we give and how much we sacrifice, which is patriarchal and fucked up bullshit. We are taught that selflessness is the ultimate virtue. But that message is incredibly dangerous when it is not balanced with self-love and boundaries and teaching women to listen to their intuition. I specifically remember times where I was taught in the very religious school I attended as a kid and from like second grade to high school. And even before that, I went to, I feel like the kindergarten and first grade I went to was even worse than the school I ended up at. So my whole life, I remember specific times where they literally gave us the message in girls' Bible class that we cannot trust ourselves. That is so damaging and toxic and patriarchal and part of a system that is quite literally set up to disconnect us from ourselves and our power and to trust something outside of us, to trust our husbands, to submit, to trust a God that is a male and all-knowing with everything, and to go outside of ourselves. It feels like selfishness when you prioritize yourself. Like when you grow up believing that your value is tied to how much you serve other people, it's almost impossible to prioritize yourself. It feels so selfish and it feels like betrayal, which is so ironic because people pleasing is self-betrayal. But when you're raised with this conditioning, this programming, it feels like betrayal when you are going in what is actually the right and healthy direction. And that's the fucked up part about it, is it's done on purpose. That's what the intention is with these religious agendas, I guess, for lack of a less conspiracy theorist word. But here's what I learned. Self-sacrifice to the point of losing yourself is not noble. It is damaging. It's cliche as hell, but you can't pour from an empty cup. So if you keep giving without ever doing anything for yourself, you're literally not helping anyone. You are making yourself useless and you are making yourself hurt. And I had to unlearn those like super ingrained beliefs, and that was really hard. It felt like I said, a betrayal of everything that I had been taught. It felt scary. It felt like I was doing something wrong or I was going to get in trouble. But I discovered that I could still be a loving, giving, generous person and protect my own energy, have my own boundaries. And what happened was I became a much better person because I'm showing up from a place of wholeness and desire and not depletion or performance. And like, go back 10 seconds and re-listen to that. Like, that is huge. It's everything. It's so much more authentic. It's so much better for everyone involved, you and those that you're giving to. So let's shift this to getting practical on like, how do you overcome this, especially when it's like so deeply ingrained? These are the things that for me have just made like a huge difference, and they're tools that you can start using like right away to start breaking those patterns of people pleasing down at their core. And remember, this is not a quick fix episode. This is definitely more of like a invitation to really sit with this and think about it and begin and start to notice in your day where you're doing this. So number one, as always, awareness. Awareness is the first step of any change. But to get awareness, we kind of have to dig. So one thing you could do is start a daily journaling practice where you ask yourself these 3 questions. What did I say yes to today that I didn't really want to? Why did I feel the need to say yes? So like, was it a fear of rejection, wanting to keep the peace, or something else? And what would have happened if I had said no? This is going to help you really, like, you're asking yourself, and your intuition is going to turn on, and your subconscious mind is going to give you an answer if you let it. And it's going to help you figure out the deeper reasons why you're still falling into these patterns, even though you consciously don't want to. And by writing it out regularly, you're activating certain like parts in the cognitive areas in your mind. I totally just fucked that up, but you know what I mean. You're going to start to notice the same triggers and the same beliefs coming up, and that is what you can work through. The second tool for overcoming people pleasing, and one of the biggest ones, but you have to have awareness first to make this effective, is EFT, emotional freedom technique, or sometimes called tapping. Tapping is a very powerful tool for rewiring beliefs about yourself that are keeping you in patterns that limit you, like people pleasing. You've been carrying this around for a really long time. People pleasing is driven by fear more than anything. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough, fear of disappointing people, fear of getting dropped, getting abandoned, losing people. Tapping helps calm the nervous system, which is where all of that fear is sitting, and release those fears from your body. And because there's a very strong mind-body connection, it's rewiring your subconscious mind as well as releasing the unwanted energy and emotion from the body. So I'm going to give you a super simple EFT practice to try. You're going to, if you're not familiar with the points, you can Google them, but you're going to start by tapping on the side of your hand, which is the setup point or the karate chop point. And you're going to repeat, even though I feel the need to please others, to be worthy of love, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. From there, you're going to begin moving through the tapping points that, again, you can watch one of my videos. There's some on YouTube. They're in the collective, or you can look up the points online. And you're going to say phrases that feel like they resonate with how you're feeling and the patterns you've been in. So things like, I release the fear of disappointing others. I choose to value myself over the approval of others. Practicing EFT for just a few minutes a day is going to help you break the emotional attachment that you have, almost like this emotional addiction to making other people happy. And it's really going to shift you to grounding yourself in self-worth. The third tool that's going to help you with this is boundary setting and affirmations. Okay. So boundary setting with affirmations and like really practicing that. So saying no is super hard when you're a people pleaser, obviously. You have spent years, probably decades, training yourself to avoid conflict and avoid rejection. One of the most powerful ways that you can retrain your mind to function differently and not be coming from that place is through positive self-talk, okay? And affirmations can certainly be a part of this. They just need to be set up in a certain way. So saying things like, it's safe for me to speak up. I'm allowed to set boundaries and stick with them. I can say no and feel good about it. I respect my needs. I protect my energy. And really just practice saying no in low stake situations. So start really small. Maybe you decline an invitation to something. Maybe you skip an unnecessary meeting. Maybe you just state your preference on something that's really minor. Like, oh, you know what? I don't want to. Can we go here instead? I like this place much better. I'm not really a huge fan of that steakhouse or whatever it is. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to do when it really matters. You are teaching your brain what is familiar. It's now familiar to speak up. It's familiar to do what you want to do, and that makes it feel safer. So when it really counts and something big comes up, it's way easier for you to set boundaries and speak your truth because you're used to doing it in smaller situations. Okay, the fourth tool that's going to help you overcome people pleasing is nervous system regulation, which EFT is part of that, but we're going to go a bit deeper. So people pleasing is tied to a dysregulated nervous system. And when you have a dysregulated nervous system, you are operating out of fight or flight. It makes you gain weight because your digestive system isn't operating fully. It messes with your bowels, like it messes with your mood. It can cause anxiety and depression. Like it's not good. When you've been conditioned to prioritize other people and their emotions, it triggers a fight or flight response every time you consider setting a boundary. So what we need to do is we need to start countering this. So start doing breath work or a simple 5-minute meditation. There's like a simple grounding practice you can do where you basically just inhale for 4 seconds through the nose, hold the breath for 4 seconds, and then exhale through the mouth for 8 seconds. And while you breathe, you're repeating positive self-talk. I am safe in my body. I am safe in my choices. That's one of my favorite mantras. That's what I was saying to myself earlier when I had to send that text I told you about. Regulating your nervous system in this way is so simple. It really doesn't take much to do it. But regularly doing that is going to regulate your system and help you stay calm when conflict comes up or when you're tempted to people please out of fear or somebody gives you pushback about a boundary you set. The fifth tool is challenging and reframing your beliefs. So people pleasing is tied to core beliefs that say, I'm only valuable if others approve of me, or conflict means I'm doing something wrong. It's not safe to be in conflict. To start shifting these, notice what your beliefs are about yourself, where they come from. So if it's like, I'm only valuable if others approve of me, ask yourself, like, challenge it. Who taught me this belief? Is it actually true, or is it just a story I've been telling myself? What's a new belief that would serve me better? So, for example, instead of, I have to make everyone happy all the time, this could be reframed to something like, I am responsible for my happiness and others are responsible for theirs. And really just making this a practice every time those limiting beliefs pop up. This is going to take time and attention and intention, and it's worth it. Okay. So of course, breaking free from people pleasing is not like a walk in the park. It's something that you're really going to have to practice. It's something that you're going to have to get your subconscious mind familiar with because it's currently unfamiliar to set boundaries and speak up for yourself. And whatever is labeled as unfamiliar by the subconscious mind automatically feels unsafe, which is why I told you to regulate your nervous system. But there are going to be a lot of moments where it feels really uncomfortable. It feels really scary. But then there's going to be a lot of moments where it feels much better and you feel relief after you do it. And that far outweighs the discomfort and the fear. And then eventually that subsides. People might not like your new boundaries, and that's fully okay. They don't have to like it. Remind yourself that their discomfort is not your responsibility. And EFT is a great tool here. Tap through those moments when fear of rejection feels overwhelming. You may feel guilty at first. That's totally normal. Guilt is your mind's way of adjusting to your new normal. So it's just a normal reaction. And when it comes up, journal through it or practice your affirmations. I deserve to prioritize myself. Okay. And then not in a negative or like self-fulfilling prophecy way, but expect some setbacks. You're undoing years or decades of conditioning. So when you notice that you people please or you fell back into old habits, really don't judge yourself. Use it as an opportunity to reflect. Why did I feel the need to people please in that moment? Where did that come from? Notice how it feels and what can I do differently next time? How can I back out of this? Just be like, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm actually not going to be able to do that. As for me, when I am looking back on my journey of freeing myself from people pleasing, and again, it's an ongoing situation, it's very clear to me that this was not just about setting boundaries. And I think that's why for a lot of people, setting boundaries doesn't really land or doesn't really work because they're not getting to the deeper root, which is people pleasing and reclaiming your sense of self. And for me, that's what it was. It was about learning that I don't need to earn love or approval, that I am inherently deserving and worthy just as I am. And it has nothing to do with what I do for other people or how much I'm putting them first. So if you are on this journey too, I want you to know I see you. You are so not alone. You can take your power back. You can reconnect with yourself. The tools that I listed here today, journaling, tapping, boundary setting, these are all really powerful steps to reclaiming your authenticity. Also, positive self-talk. It is not a race. There is no rush. The journey is the whole point. But each step that you take is going to be a step closer to freedom and reconnecting with your true self and really like meeting and getting to know your true self and living with alignment with her, with who you truly are. I have created a really short and easy, it's like a Google Doc, and you can just make a copy of it. You can download it as a PDF, use it as a journal sheet, whatever you want. It's editable. And it has all the like journal prompts, the EFT script, the questions to ask yourself when you catch yourself people pleasing. Everything that I said in the episode is in this Google Doc for you to just save into your phone and reference. It's a great thing to pull out at the end of the day and like remember, revisit that. Like, where did I say yes today when I wanted to say no? Where did I sacrifice myself? Where did I self-betray? And just really getting into the breaking of that habit. So what I would suggest you do is set a little alarm for right around like the end of the day, like maybe bedtime, and just be like people pleasing PDF, and just set a reminder to pull that up on your phone or your computer before you wind down for bed and go through it. Use the journal prompts if that's what's feeling good. Go over the self-reflection questions, do a little EFT. You can do that at night or maybe in the morning, but set a reminder once a day to look at that. I organized it for you really well, so it's very easy to navigate and here to support you, and it's totally free. So you can get that at alicasasa.com/TPS links. Okay, my loves, that is a wrap on today's episode. We've covered a lot because people pleasing is so much more than just saying yes to things that you don't want to say yes to. It is about our deep need for approval, our beliefs, and the limits those give us, and even how our nervous system reacts to standing up for ourselves and setting boundaries. So I encourage you, go get that free PDF. Start using a tool today, whatever speaks to you. Maybe it's EFT, maybe it's journaling. And if you want to go deeper and get more support on this journey, make sure you come join us in Becoming Her Collective, where we are diving into these topics with a community that has your back. We create challenges. There's regular coaching calls. We're creating courses in there every 4 to 6 weeks. It is an incredible space, and you can get that info at TPS links as well. Or go to alicasasa.com/collective and you can see if it's open or if it's waitlisted, and you can get your name on that list or get your butt in there if it's open. Until next time, remember, you are enough just as you are. I got you, I see you, and you're doing a phenomenal job. See you next time, babe.